Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 11th of August 2022, just 3 days before our independence, 75th Independence Day is celebrated. Nevertheless, we've got lots to discuss on this very day. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the terrorism that is also affecting our FATA region and other parts of the country as well, whether it be the 4 soldiers who have been recently martyred in a suicide attack in North Waziristan, or the Chief of the Army Staff, who says that terrorism has the potential to destabilize the region and needs a well-coordinated response, as well as the echoes that were heard in the National Assembly as far as militancy are concerned. There is a collective resolve to get rid of terrorism, extremism and militancy. This is going to be our leading segment. Our second story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Indian atrocities as far as Kashmir is concerned, and this is something that is continuing, whether it be in Budgam or other areas of the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The blatant atrocities of the Indian forces continue, which has resulted in the martyrdom on 2 consecutive days of Kashmiris. Whether this is going on and will go on for a long time to come, whether there will be a stop to it at some time, whether there will be some kind of a pressure from the international community and the human rights organizations, only time will tell. For the moment, this is going unabated. This is going to be our second story of the day. Then we'll be talking about the National Institute of Health that says that 88% of the population has now been fully vaccinated, which is a huge high for Pakistan. And also the single day tally of new cases in the country has remained below 1,000. Also, he has said that 94% of the country's population had received a single dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, and 88%, of course, as I told you, were fully vaccinated. We'll also be talking about the positivity ratio, that is 3.1 today, and the number of cases are also, of course, there. Nevertheless, we need to be extremely vigilant. This is going to be our third story, and our final story is the National Day of Minorities. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Day of Minorities is extremely important. It is the white in our national flag. It is a very important a segment of our country, of our nation, of our society. They have contributed, whether it be towards the independence of Pakistan, whether it be since then, whether it be towards harboring good relations between the different faiths. Pakistan is going in that very right direction, and we owe it to our minorities to give them their due rights as well. This is why the National Day of Minorities is celebrated today, and this is going to be our fourth story. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns terrorism in Pakistan and the collective resolve of the army, the people and the parliament to get rid of all elements that are provoking militancy, extremism and, of course, this terrorism inside the country. More in the following report.
Pakistan has enjoyed comparative peace over the past few years, owing to firm stand of nation against terrorism of all forms. Over the past few months, Pakistan's security landscape has changed. The spate of attacks clearly suggests that the militants are regrouping, prompting a resurgence of violence. 4 soldiers embraced martyrdom when a suicide bomber blew himself up near a military convoy in the Mir Ali area of North Waziristan. ISPR stated that Pakistan Army is determined to eliminate the scourge of terrorism from the country, adding that the sacrifices of the brave soldiers will not go in vain. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has strongly denounced the suicide attack on the military convoy in Mir Ali, reiterating the nation's firm resolve to root out the menace of terrorism. Shehbaz Sharif said the terrorists will not be allowed to succeed in their sordid designs. Pakistan endured great hardships in its battle against terrorism, and Pakistan's counter-terrorism operations resulted in decreased terrorism in the region. Although the international community has always calculated Pakistan's counter-terrorism role through the Afghan angle, they have failed to recognize the deterioration of Pakistan's internal security and economic conditions. Pakistan's momentous counter-terrorism efforts need appreciation by the international community.
Dr. Farah Naz, who's an analyst, joins us online. Farah, thank you very much to have joined us. When you look at the increase in the militancy, whether it be in FATA or in the previous months, we also saw some cases in Balochistan. Why do you feel is there an increase in the number of cases?
Thank you, Omar. If we look at the recent activities in Pakistan particularly, I think it is all the spillover effects of whatever is happening at international level and between Pakistan and Afghanistan. We could see that there were some peace negotiations taking place between the DDP and the government of Pakistan with the help of the Afghan government. But suddenly there is some sort of increase in the militant activities in Pakistan here, which is not something that we should be appreciating and we should be, encouraging. So we need to put a stop there. But we need to understand the dynamics of terrorism in the region first, and then we can understand why it is happening.
All right, that's a very interesting point that you've raised, the dynamics of terrorism. What are the dynamics of terrorism? Is there some kind of a methodology in the way these terrorist attacks are happening? I mean, the latest spate we've seen the 4 soldiers who've been martyred. We've also seen, there is an increase in militancy, and of course, some of that, a lot of that comes from across the border as well. Do you feel there is some kind of a methodology behind it?
Well, if we look at the past and the history of terrorism, before 9/11, there were 2 terrorist organizations, the predominant ones. One was the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and another one was the IRA, which was very prominently doing research activities. So they were all working, both of them were working for some sort of political movement, and they were called nationalists. Now when we come and look at whatever is happening in Afghanistan, there are various terrorist groups that are operating since 9/11, they are all something that is politically created. It's not something that they are pursuing some nationalist agenda and goals. So for understanding the dynamics of terrorism in the region, we have to look at from where they're emerging. And when I call it, they are political in nature. Actually, they all are, shaped through some political circumstances, some political events that took place. We will not get into the very details of what sort of event took place, but they all are popping up because of that. And whatever is happening in Balochistan, we could see it whenever there is something big happening, there will be terrorist activities, catching fire on. And it's not only this part, but now KPK, one of the very important border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, it is also getting heated these days. And it's not the border, but the terrorism and militancy across the border, and how they are transferring from Afghanistan and crossing border and coming in and having various activities. This is really debatable. But the sleeping cells that we all talk about, the security studies scholars and academics, they talk about that terrorism is something that's not going anywhere. It still remains valid in whatever capacity the states are leading towards one another. But when it comes to relations between different states, these sleeping cells suddenly they pop up and they emerge as a threat to the state and to the region, just like putting pressure tactics on bringing other parties to terms. So this is not something unusual. This is usual phenomena of terrorism that is happening even now in Pakistan.
All right. In this usual phenomena of terrorism, what is the ultimate goal of, for example, the militants that are coming from Afghanistan into Pakistan, and of course the incidents that we've seen in North Waziristan of late, and we have seen quite some incidents, whether it be on the 30th of May, on the 4th of July, or of course earlier this week as well. What do they want from Pakistan? Destabilization? What else?
Well, as I was mentioning, that before 9/11, there were 2 terrorist groups operating, and their goal was nationalist movement. They wanted to bring, a change, a setup, something like that. But these kind of terrorist groups, whatever is happening here in this part, it is more like pressure tactics. As we have seen that whenever the international community wants to put pressure on a particular country, they are using economic and financial measures as a tool. So when it comes to, bringing certain other pressures on a state or on a part of the country to bring them to terms, it could be political reasons, it could be socio-cultural reasons. So bringing them to terms, they are bringing some sort of activities to pressurize them. And Omar, if you look at the ways, the basic definition of terrorism, what it means actually is, making people so fearful that they agree to your terms and conditions. And we have seen the way Islamic State was emerging, and they were terrorizing and making people fearful of that this is who we are and you have to listen to us. So this is how terrorism operates throughout the world. In case of the groups that are re-emerging in Waziristan and in Swat recently, I think the demands will follow, but with the killing of the Khorassani, I think things are not going in the right direction, and the tension is going to be further escalated, which I'm afraid leading towards further destabilization in Pakistan.
All right, that's a very interesting point that you've also raised, Farah, and you talk about Khorasani. Now, Khorasani's death, does this complicate the situation between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and if so, what is the way out?
It does complicate the situation between Pakistan and Afghanistan because various delegations from Pakistani state and they were in contact with the Taliban to overcome the problems and the rift between them and to overcome the issues. And the ambassador, former ambassador to Afghanistan, he was playing a very important role in that. But whatever happened by, with the killing of the Khorasani, things are really getting challenging. And how to overcome that, I think now it will take time because now the Guinea is getting out of the bottle, and we can see the way they are, capturing military officers and that they're capturing the civil administrative people and bringing them to terms. Initially, I think they will not get into beheading at the stage they were started, God forbid, but slowly and steadily they will be asking for money to build on their resources, which they are doing in Tawad at the moment. And in case of Waziristan, they are putting more pressures on the military operations there, that your operations are not up to the standard and probably they need to further escalate them. So it's all about, destabilizing the region and demanding for their own rights there, which we never let it happen even in the past. From the state of Pakistan.
All right, Farah. Now, I'd like to refer you to a quote that our Chief of the Army said while he was talking to his Iraqi counterpart, and he said terrorism has a potential to destabilize the region and it needs a well-coordinated response. What kind of well-coordinated response, in your point of view, is he referring to?
Well, I completely agree with whatever Chief said there, that terrorism has a potential, and we have seen the way 9/11 reshaped global politics, the way it reshaped, not only the political alliances, but the way people started looking at different parts of the world, particularly the Muslim community. It has led towards a complete different environment. So before 9/11 and post 9/11, we have been living in two different worlds. So whatever the Chief said that it needs a coordinated approach, yes, it does. But what is required is, do we need to come to terms with the TTP? We were already in negotiation with them, and we were already having peace talks, agreements, and some sort of arrangements that we were coming up to mutual understanding. But things are not coming up. And in case of Afghanistan and the various terrorist groups, so they have the Daesh presence there as well. They have the China is also, afraid of the terrorist operations happening there. And even Russia is concerned with the terrorist operations there. So the concern is that we need to have mutual understanding of all the actors who are becoming a target and threatened with various different activities that is operating from Afghanistan to different parts. And I would like to draw your attention back to one of the basic conditions of the Taliban that is related to the Taliban government recognition was that it was not to be used for terrorist operations and activities. I would say with such sort of activities developing on the border region in Pakistan, it is really leading to a serious question for Afghanistan and the Taliban government, which is already struggling with so many other issues, that if TTP, they are unable to stop TTP to have terrorist operation activities in Pakistan, then it will lead to a serious problem between the two countries, and which we cannot afford, having, an unhappy neighbor on both sides, even for Afghanistan, and, a neighbor who is not happy with the dynamics of terrorism operating from Afghanistan soil, and even for Afghanistan, if it is doing it, I think we will not be happy with Afghanistan. So we need to have mutual coordination and cooperation.
All right, Farah, also I'd like to understand what the whole echoing in the National Assembly pertains to when it comes to the rise in the militancy. We've also heard Defence Minister Khaja Asif Saab admitting on the floor on the National Assembly about his apprehensions concerning the talks with the TTP and about the Tehreek-e-Taliban itself, and the way the people are rising against the TTP in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Do you feel this is a movement that is going to gain momentum if such incidents continue in the future?
Omar, I would say that you have to look at terrorism not something that is organically happening. It is a politically driven tool that is used. I was referring to it even earlier that as you know, international organizations and various powerful countries, they use economic measures as a tool to put pressure on other states to come to terms. So terrorism, if we go back to the history of it, it was something happening even in the 18th century. Suicide attacks, it was happening in the Tamil Tigers' time, and it was happening even in the time of the Taliban. So whether we can take it something that is really, we can stop it and it will re-emerge or something, no, it is all political.
Last question to you pertains to how we need to move forward as far as eliminating militancy from the country is concerned. In the increase and of such incidents in the last few weeks and months, what kind of strategy do you feel that our armed forces and our government and our other national organizations need to go forward with in order to curtail all such events in the future?
Look, Omar, for us as a state, I think security of our people, stability of our country, this should be above all. And we can only achieve security of our own people and stability of our country if we are in good terms with our neighborhood. And that happens to be Afghanistan in this case of militancy and all of that. We have seen some various important killings happen on both sides, and we have seen they have been the TTP. Some of the TTP people have been killed, but they're also killing our army people, our civilians, and all of that. We cannot afford it further. So the strategy should be some mutual understanding and reaching out to consensus. But that was in the process. It was about to happen, but with the killing of Khorasani, things are really getting wrong and in a different dimension, which we cannot afford as a state. And so I would say we need to strongly emphasize on having strong commitment with and taking strong commitment from the Taliban government on the front of the use of soil by the TTP for militancy against Pakistani people and against the Pakistani military forces here. And without that commitment, I think we cannot achieve stability here. So probably that was also one of the factors that the chief was referring to, that we need to have a joint collaboration or cooperation, unless we won't be able to bring the genie back to the water.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Farah Naz, analyst, of course, joining us, talking to us about militancy, extremism and terrorism in Pakistan and how that needs to be curtailed. We've seen that commitment from our armed forces in the different operations that it has undergone in the last decade or so, and successfully at that, and how our chief also talks about terrorism that has the potential to destabilize the region and needs a well-coordinated response. And of course, this coordinated response will be seen in the next days and the coming days and weeks as well from all the different parties that are involved. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns the Indian atrocities in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, whether it be in Budgam, whether it be other areas of the illegal Jammu and Kashmir region. The atrocities from the Indian forces continue. More in the following report.
The unabated Indian human rights violations, war crimes and violations of international humanitarian law in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir highlight grave risk of genocide. In a latest spate of violence, Indian troops in their fresh act of state terrorism martyred 3 more youth in Budgam district. The youth were killed by the troops during a cordon and search operation in Waterhill area of the district. The struggle for the right to self-determination in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is indigenous, but the Indian government is trying to dampen freedom movement by the draconian strong-arm tactics. Ever since 5th of August, hundreds of innocent Kashmiris have been martyred, arbitrarily arrested or rounded up under trumped-up charges. Even the worst state-sponsored terrorism did not break the spirit of the Kashmiri people or crush their legitimate struggle. Pakistan's government, people and parliament always stood firm with Kashmiris in their just struggle and highlighted the plight of Kashmiris at all relevant international fora. The peace of South Asia is hostage to Indian hegemonic designs inspired by the BJP government's majoritarian politics. International community must hold India accountable for its crimes against humanity and must call on the Indian government to stop the extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris in fake encounters and coordinated search operations.
Mustafa Abdullah Baloch, the foreign affairs expert, joins us online. Mustafa, thank you very much to have joined us. Mustafa, when you look at the number of casualties as a result of the atrocities in the Indian Hill Valley, it is slowly and steadily increasing. In the last 2 days, we've had two different spate of, martyring the innocent youth in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is just, we've talked about the huge spate of incidents that have been not happening since a decade or even before that. But of course, since 2016, it has gained momentum, and since the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A, it has again taken a new turn. Do you see some kind of a light at the end of the tunnel?
Thank you, Omar, for having me on your show. The Indian government has been suppressing the people of Kashmir since a long time, since more than maybe a decade or two. But the recent episode of the revocation of Article 370 was a red line which they crossed. And after that, they have been constantly suppressing the innocent youth of Kashmir, which is exactly the same strategy which is being used in Palestine by the Israeli government. So they are also trying to use the same formula by marginalizing and suppressing the youth of Kashmir, so that the youth may not stand against these atrocities of Indian government. So actually, this is a very planned policy by Modi, and he is trying to, actually trying to change the demography of Kashmir, because they are trying to influx a huge amount of, Kashmiri Hindu Pandits who have been living here and there in India. They are trying to bring them, and also anybody living in India have the right now to, they can buy a property over there. They can live in Kashmir. But this is actually, an attempt to dilute the large population of Muslims living in Kashmir since years. So actually,
Mustafa, when you talk of the bland policy of this policy of Narendra Modi, when you talk of all the draconian laws that have been put into place, when you look at all the killings or the rapes or the incarcerations of the different people, those who try to raise their voice against the atrocities that are being perpetrated on them, what needs to be done, at which level, by whom? Pakistan is trying its level best politically, morally, diplomatically. But it's not just Pakistan's role, is it? It's also the role of the international community to put an end to these atrocities.
Exactly, you made a very valid point that it's a role of international community, and it's a role of OIC as well, because obviously Kashmir is Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir is a place where there are a large population of Muslims residing, and they have been victimized by the Indian atrocities since many years. And the recent episodes which we have seen, they have blinded young children by the pellet guns. So they are actually using these harsh lines to victimize, to suppress the people, so that they don't they live in fear, so that they don't have any desire to stand for their rights. But
Mustafa, how long can a society live in fear? There's always a retaliation. We've seen the retaliation coming from the youth in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Despite the atrocities, we've seen that from the women, we've seen that from the elderly as well, and the children as well. How long can they suppress this? Will they completely eliminate the entire Muslim population of the held region? What is the ultimate aim?
We have seen the heroism of Burhan Wani. There are people like Burhan Wani who have stood for the rights of Kashmiris, and they are obviously heroes of the people of Kashmir, and even the entire nation of Pakistan stands by the people of Kashmir. But there is more to be done. We cannot just pass resolutions in parliament and just
But Pakistan can only do as much. It is not. It is also as you said, the role of the OIC. And speaking of the OIC, you remember on the 5th of August they had taken out a very strong worded statement as far as Articles 37, 370 and 35A are concerned, and that had also resulted in a reaction from India. But nevertheless, we see a certain tilt of the OIC as far as trying to find some resolution of the Kashmir issue is concerned. This said, why is it all relegated to statements and papers and documents and no action?
That's the point. That's the point, and that's the misery actually. That it's all in papers, it's all in resolutions, it's all in the books, and nothing is being implemented forcefully, because the way India is using these draconian laws against the people of Kashmir, you cannot just deal with such resolutions which are not being implemented forcefully, and we have to put a lot of pressure on Indian government, and we have to engage with the West, even like the US, and we should convince US that this is a very serious issue which they need to at least step in and just convince India to at least let the people decide, let the people of Kashmir decide what they want to do. You cannot just.
But Mustafa, I'd like to understand what you just said, convincing the United States of America, a country that stands for human rights and has stood for human rights. We see that and we've seen that over the decades. Why is it more than silent, apart from certain statements that have come from the state office? Why is the US government more or less silent? I mean, all it needs to do is put a little bit of pressure on India, and I'm sure India will reel as a result of that, but it's not putting that pressure. Is it part of the Indo-Pacific strategy of the US that withholds any kind of pressure tactic on India?
Yeah, I guess Indians have engaged US quite for a long time, and they have tried to build strong relations with the US, and that's the reason why US is quite silent on this issue. The reason is that Pakistan has been quite distant with our foreign policy in the previous government was not that good. We were like quite distant from the West, and we were there was a lot of ego issue. So resulting into the situation which Kashmir is facing right now, we could not engage the West in this, and we could not convince them that this is the prime issue of Pakistan. We need to solve Kashmir issue first. Yes, we have been facing a lot of issues internally, economic issues, political issues, but yes, apart from internal issues, apart from Afghanistan, Kashmir is an integral part of Pakistan. We believe that the Kashmiri peoples are looking up to Pakistani people and up to Pakistani government.
And when you talk about Pakistan, Mustafa, I'd like to understand something. I've talked to other people concerning the Kashmir issue and, of course, the atrocities in the Hill Valley. Do you feel Pakistan needs a more aggressive diplomatic approach when it comes to this, or do you feel Pakistan is doing already all it can?
I believe that Pakistan's foreign policy is obviously it's changing with every government, and I believe that the recent government is quite fresh, and it's quite new, and I believe that the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Baloch, has on his initial days has tried to put this issue on international forums that yes, Kashmir is a very important issue for us, and we need to address that. And I believe that in coming days, the government of Pakistan will take strong action and will make adequate policies for the people of Kashmir, so that obviously there's a huge amount of suppression in Kashmir. The way they have dealt with Yasin Malik, I mean, they have not even given any humanitarian benefit to that person who he's not a terrorist, he's not a criminal, he's a leader of Kashmir, he's been loved by the people of Kashmir.
2 life sentences, Mustafa, 2 life sentences. This is not a joke.
Exactly.
For a person who has tried to pursue the Gandhian way of life, as per Mr. Yasin Malik himself. Nevertheless, of course, we see the way the Indian government or the Indian forces want to turn this Indian held valley. But we see the little effects within India as well of this. We see the little uprisings not only within the Indian held valley, but also outside of India. I'd like to refer you to an Indian parliamentarian and Sikh leader, Simanjeet Singh Mann, who in a video message has called for the boycott support of the Modi government's Har Ghar Tiranga campaign, which means, of course, hoisting of the Indian flag on every house in the Punjab state. He says that the Indian flag should not be hoisted there, and instead he says that there should be other flags. The Sikh flag should be hoisted there. You know, we see the retaliation that is coming from other communities as well, and I'm not just talking of the Indian Hill Valley, I'm talking of within India. Is this going to gain momentum in the days to come?
This is, Omar, actually a common phenomena. If you suppress a community or a nation, things like this will emerge. And Modi, now or later, he will have to face these consequences, because obviously people are not blind. They know what Kashmiris are facing right now. I mean, during the whole COVID period, they were not given any medical aid. They were entirely cut from the mainstream media. There was no, mobile network operating over there. There was nothing. So actually, this is we don't know what's happening. We don't know how many people have been killed in Kashmir, because I don't believe there is accurate news coming out from there, because they are trying to, hide a lot of things. So this is scary, actually.
All right. In all this environment of being scared, and of course the people are scared in Indian Hill Valley, we also have organizations that are trying to mediate, that are trying for India to slow down, they're trying to India to find some kind of a solution to it. I'd like to refer to also Pakistan India People's Forum for Peace and Democracy, that has also called upon India to end its regime of detention and incarceration of socio-political activists and release the political prisoners. Will India ever do so? Because, you know, we see all kinds of suppression activities that are happening in India. All those who are trying to raise any kind of voice of sanity, their voices are being muted either through incarcerations or through other means possible. Will India ever understand?
See, they will not understand like this. They need to, there's a lot more to be done. And I believe Pakistan should work on it. And we need to bring India on table. We need to bring them on table by convincing them that, see, this is a very serious issue, and this is not even in favor of you, because if you do this, this is going to bring retaliation, a lot of retaliation within your own country. So but
you know, Mustafa, it's interesting that you point that India should be brought to the discussion table. Pakistan has tried many a times to bring India to the table to discuss all the thorny issues between the two countries, and on top of these issues is the issue of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India doesn't want to come to the discussion table. It has tried to dismantle SARC one way or the other in the past as well, and we know that for a fact. In the SCO also, it is with Pakistan also a member. Nevertheless, the fact remains that it is trying its level best so that either the issue is pushed under the rug, or people let India do whatever it wants to do in the Hill Valley. Who can cast the first stone on India in your point of view?
See, I believe that, as I said earlier, the US needs to, step into this crisis, and they need to, deal with this issue on a serious note. Because obviously, if they want Pakistan to help them in Afghanistan, then definitely they should also help Pakistan in solving the Kashmir issue. See, this is a serious issue for us, and this has been for decades. And I believe, Umar, that the Muslims in India will one day stand against the Indian atrocities, because they, not just in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but from the whole Indian region, there have been the voice being raised against the Indian atrocities, be it the Bollywood actors, be the local Muslims who have been living there for a long time, but they have been systematically suppressed. because I don't know what's the plan, but what's the plan of Modi, but the plan is
But
very,
the plan is
very,
quite evident
very
as far as Narendra Modi is concerned. You know, he wants to make the majority Muslim population in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir into a minority one by all the laws that he has put into place, by all the domiciles that he is giving to the non-Muslims. And in this way, in a couple of years, he will say, okay, let's do the plebiscite. And once the plebiscite is done, the Muslims will no longer be in a majority. And hey, presto, this is what the government in India has always wanted, the BJP government, that they say that, you know, India, the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, as they have already said, is an integral part of their own country. That is why they scrapped the 370 and 35A as well. How important is the role of the opposition in India?
I believe opposition is being also suppressed by the fascism of Modi, because he's not letting anybody speak. You must have seen how Rahul Gandhi was treated recently. So this shows that there is no concept of democracy in India, and it's a clear dictatorship under Modi. And we all know that how he has been a butcher in Gujarat, and he's doing the same thing currently in entire India. And I feel that, you know, one day or the other, the people of the India, mainly the Muslims, they will definitely stand against this. And obviously, how long can Modi sustain this fascism? One day he will fall.
Do you feel that the political will of the people might be the changing factor, the power of the vote in the next elections?
Yeah, I believe that the change of power and the right to vote of people might change, because there's quite suppression and quite exhausting environment, I believe.
True.
In people are they can't even breathe, they can't even talk. See the way the iconic Bollywood actors have been one after
treated.
the other.
Of course, there's a whole, there's a whole list of, Mustafa, of incidents that have been happening not only to the Muslims, especially to the Muslims, but also to the Sikhs, to the Dalits, to the Christians as well, which of course is trying to completely change the demography not only of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but in the long run of India itself, to make it not only a Hindu majority, but at a place where pluralism no longer is in effect, where democratic values are no longer in effect, where the rights of the people are no longer in effect. Let's hope the world realizes and acts before it is way too late. Mustafa Abdullah Baloch, foreign affairs expert, thank you very much to have joined us and to have talked to us about what is happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan will continue to support and stand for the people of the Indian held region, politically, morally, diplomatically. Let's come to our last two stories. The first concerns, of course, COVID-19. The National Institute of Health has recently talked about the number of vaccinations that have happened in the country. It says that 88% of population has been fully vaccinated against COVID-19, and 94% have at least gotten their first dose. They also talked about the positivity ratio. Of course, today the positivity ratio is a bit higher than yesterday. It's 3.1%. Patients in critical care 155, positive cases 353 on a total test of 11,388. Now, the NIH has also said that 30% of the country's population has now been given a booster dose. We've talked about COVID-19. We've said that if 6 months have passed since your second dose of the vaccination, you need to get a booster dose. And if you've already gotten the booster dose, then 5 to 6 months after the first booster dose, you need to get a second booster dose. We need to take a collective effort in order to protect ourselves and our loved ones and the society and the nation in order to prevent further spread of COVID-19, and only a collective resolve can help that. Let's come to our last story, and that concerns the National Day of Minorities that was celebrated today. The minorities, ladies and gentlemen, are an extremely important part of Pakistan. They are the white in our flag. They are in our hearts, in our minds. They have supported Pakistan through thick and thin. They have remained in Pakistan after the partition. They could have gone to India. They didn't. They stayed here, and a lot of other religions. There are so many religions that are here in Pakistan, not just the Hindus. We've got the Sikhs. We've got so many other religions that are present here as well. I would like to quote some excerpts from the message of our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab on the occasion of the National Minorities Day, because his message, I feel, is the crux of what the National Minorities Day stands for. he said that this day serves to highlight the contributions that our non-Muslim Pakistani citizens are making to the national development. This day, he said, we express our gratitude to our minority communities for their meritorious services for the uplifting of the motherland. And he also said that Islam is a religion of peace, harmony and tolerance. He said the government stands by the obligations of freedom of religion and sanctity of the person and property of our minorities, which have further been solidified and formalized in our constitution. And he said that we will continue to move forward in that very resolve. They are part of Pakistan. They have been and they will always be. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. As I always end the show, kindly stay safe and follow the SOPs as far as COVID-19 is concerned, and also take a lot of care of your loved ones. These are very important days for everybody around us. Allah Hafiz.